Hallo zusammen. Part of sharing my story with you is that I have to share not just the good, but the bad also. And as much as I would love to always put out positive videos, unfortunately that can't always be the case because that's just not reality. Life over here in Europe is every bit as complicated as it is in the United States. It's just I think that there are more possibilities here to resolve those difficulties. Let me give you an example because something happened last week that is very significant to my life, and I think it's illustrative of the difficulties that we're all going to face in our lives always. Even if you come to Europe or any other continent, your past can still reach out and bite you in the ass. Unfortunately, Google reaches around the entire planet, and all somebody has to do is Google your name. That's what happened to me, and let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what the consequences were. All my life, I have loved flying. All my life, I have wanted to be a pilot. When I got out of high school and went into university, what I wanted to do was be a commercial pilot for the airlines, and my family kind of talked me out of it. They had good reasons for doing so. Their justifications were valid. So I ended up giving up my dream of being a commercial airline pilot, and instead, I just flew simulators on my home computer for entertainment. When I went to prison, flying was one of those things that kind of kept me tethered to hope. To hope. In that whenever I was depressed or lonely, when you lay on your bunk late at night and your thoughts go crazy places, I used to, daydream about flying. Because one day I was going to get out of prison, and I thought, maybe there's the possibility to get my pilot's license. Now, before you think that's naive, I went to prison in 1994 when the sex offender registry was nothing like it is today. So even back then, there was at least some chance that I could have moved on with my life after prison. But of course, during my time in prison, in the mid-90s, going into the late 90s, 2000s, the sex offender restrictions and registry just went haywire, completely off the rails. So of course, after the escape, when I did those 3,651 consecutive days in isolation, you can imagine that I did an awful lot of meditating in that isolation cell because there wasn't much else to do. And one of the things I started doing as a mental exercise is I would put myself in the cockpit of an airliner and I would actually go through every detail of the pre-flight checklist. And I would prepare my aircraft for, departure. It was a way to maintain my sanity and to hold on to some kind of hope that in the future, maybe someday, I would be able to fulfill that lifelong dream of being a pilot. When I got out of prison in 2016, I actually talked to a private flight instructor, and I was going to be able to get my training, but because of the FAA regulations, I would have had to have a clean background check in order to get my pilot's license, so it was never going to happen in the United States. I could pay the pay the $10,000 to get the training, but I would never end up with the license. So what was the point? So instead, I spent 1/10 the cost, about $1,000, I almost said euro again, about $1,000, and I invested it in a really high quality graphics card for my home computer so that I could fly the latest generation of flight simulators. And yeah, it was a massive improvement on, what it was when I was a kid before prison, but it was still only a simulator. As you know, in 2018, I came to Europe, and from 2018 until really this year, I concentrated fully on getting my career put together, getting my own apartment, just getting my own life set up. Many of you will remember from a video that I put out last year, when I moved into this apartment in this town, I found out that on the top of the mountain, I live about 2/3 the way up the mountain, but at the very top of the mountain is a grass airfield with a hangar and a clubhouse, and there's an actual flying club up there. And I said on video that I swore I was going to learn to fly a glider. I expected to do it a whole lot sooner, but my social anxiety I'll go so far as to say my PTSD after prison kept me from reaching out to the folks up there at the top of the mountain because I just didn't want another rejection. For those of you who are on the registry or have a loved one on the registry, you understand that every time you meet someone new or you try to put yourself in a new social setting, it's only a matter of time before it blows up in your face. It's only a matter of time before somebody Googles you and throws a fit. So I just didn't want to go through that. And I was very, very reluctant to go up to the mountain, to the top of the mountain. Well, my German skills language skills have reached the point that I can talk to damn near anybody about darn near anything. I'm basically fluent at a probably above an average level. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm nowhere near as fluent as I want to be. But my language skills cannot be used as an excuse anymore not to put myself in awkward social settings. And my thinking was that I need to raise my German to the next level, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to hang out with German speakers. The problem at work, as I've probably said before in videos, is 90% of my workers are foreigners, and my German is already better than theirs. And all of my German colleagues want to speak to me in English in order to improve their language skills for business reasons. So I don't get as much opportunity as I would like to speak German. So finally I reached the point when, you know what, I'm just tired of being a coward. I need to get up on top of that mountain, meet these people, and just, whatever, come what may. So I did that. One day I went up to the top of the mountain and I met the directors for the flight club, and I spoke with them in German. And I explained to them that not only did I want to learn to fly, but I wanted to do it in German. I don't want to speak English. They loved the idea, and they welcomed me into the club. And my perspective of Germans changed after I joined that club. Before I got to Germany, I always viewed Germans as very cold, unfriendly people. Now, I'm not saying they're rude, but they are very difficult to get to know. And even after I moved here, that still proved to be true, because in the 4 years that I was here before joining the club, I don't think I really ever made any close German friends. My boss, who I do socialize with, was probably the closest friend I'd made in Germany that was an actual German, not a foreigner. So in moving into this area in southern Germany, these folks have a reputation for being the Germans of the German. They are really cold. They are really difficult to get to know. They are really, I don't want to say unfriendly, but they're not friendly either. So I did have that anxiety also. But I'm going to tell you, within 2 weeks of joining that club, getting to know everybody, they got to know me. My view of Germans has changed dramatically. My view of the Germans that live in this area has changed dramatically. To say that they have been friendly, to say that they have been warm, generous, yes, yes, and yes. I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words. So dramatically has my view of Germans shifted. And how do I describe what it is like to actually get into a plane, climb into a plane, launch, and your hands are on the controls? Your life is in your own hands. And I've started out by learning to fly gliders, because there's here in Germany, there's a progression. You start with gliders, you go to motor gliders, then you go to regular small motor planes and so forth. I started flying gliders only because that was a required step. Holy cow, I had no idea that gliders were that much fun. Talking about a completely natural form of flying. It is just like a bird. It's quiet up there. I'll make videos so you'll be able to hear them. Or I have made videos so that you can hear them. Hear the lack of noise in the cockpit. It is amazing. Oh, it was worth the wait. And so I got into the club, got in with these really friendly people, got into the whole flying scene, and was having the time of my life. My attitude improved so drastically at work that my area supervisor actually came to my office one day to take me to lunch to tell me that he had never seen me this happy in the 4 years I'd been in prison. My family was telling me that I looked different. It was exciting. And then the hammer fell. It was only a matter of time, and I knew it. Somebody finally Googled me. Somebody finally complained to the board of directors of the club. On a Thursday night at about 10:30 at night, I received a letter via email. It was a letter literally contained in an email, advising me that the club now knew that I was a convicted sex offender, and that because they have to concern themselves with the security of the young pilots, and because they have to think about the fact that investing in my training would be pointless because I could not pass a background check, they terminated my membership in the club and I was expelled. Now, I was as much heartbroken as I was angry, because all they did was Google me and then expelled me. They literally looked at the worst possible information that was out there about me and expelled me without asking me my side of the story. That is so un-German. Or that is so not what I have come to believe about how German culture works. I was devastated. My lifelong dream again ripped away from me. I called two of my closest friends, my closest friend in the United States who was not home, and I called my closest friend in Germany who was not available. He was probably sleeping. I could not talk to them. So what I ended up doing was talking to one of the board members of my executive committee. By the way, we have formed a human rights organization here in Germany. We formed it with the government. It's legal. It's registered. We just haven't made that information public yet because we're not ready to go public. That will be happening in the very near future. But I spoke with one of my executive board members, and he and I talked literally the entire night. Well, it wasn't night for him because he's in the United States, but I paced my apartment back and forth the entire night on the telephone, strategizing about what I was going to do. Because as devastated as I was, as angry as I was, as hurt as I was, damn it, I didn't come all this way to be a victim. I didn't come all this way just to have my feet cut out from under me again. I'm not going to play dead. And so that night, the next morning, because I literally stayed awake until 5 o'clock in the morning, at which time I then had to get on the bus and go to work. So I did about a 36-hour period without sleeping. When I came home from work, I sat myself down in front of my computer and I wrote a 13-point rebuttal. I wrote very rationally, very succinctly, and point by point, I destroyed the argument that was used against me. I was very polite. I was very professional. I was very to the point, but I was in this to win it. And I submitted that letter back to the president of the flying club, and I asked if he would be kind enough to grant me a personal meeting because I would like to sit down and face-to-face discuss this with the directors. The reason I wanted to do that is because over the years, starting in prison, every single time that I have sat down with someone and talked to them about my situation, talked to them about the registry, talked to them about sex offender law, and explained it to them in prison and out of prison, I have not lost one of those arguments yet, one of those conversations. When I got out of prison, I gave speeches at 3 different churches in North Florida. All 3 churches ended up becoming allies. To this day, they are allies. And one of those churches even paid my airline ticket to come to Europe and put money in my pocket for when I got here. Think about the fact that my company that I work for here in Europe knows every detail of my past. And 3 times I have been promoted within management. And I'm now a general manager of an office with a staff of about 30, with 3 managers working for me and a budget of multi-million euros. So when I have these discussions, they always turn out well. This was going to be no different. I had a plan. I was going to tackle this head on because I just don't believe that hiding from the issue is going to help anything. I think positive engagement is the answer. So that's setting the stage for what happened. That's going to be the end of this video. In the next video, I'm going to describe for you the meeting that I had with these folks and the outcome. See you in the next video.